trucking on, and I'm trucking on. Move her on down the line, another town will do me fine. I'm trucking on, I'm trucking on.
Howdy, friends, and welcome to Truckin' On. I'm your host, Ward Richmond. I really appreciate you tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy the show. Frank, Hajdu, what's up, my man?
I'm here, dude. It's good to see you.
Welcome to the Hollywood edition of Truckin' On.
Oh, my God. Are we here already? This is fantastic. Ward, you have, as I said earlier, you have Airbnb'd the most Ward Airbnb imaginable.
I did. I hit the jackpot. This place is... it feels like my spirit house.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe. There's some old Hollywood, there's some new Hollywood, and kind of whatever other wardness he wants to layer over it. But I'm happy to see you here, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. How long have you been living here now?
I moved out to LA in 2004, and I thought I'd be here for grad school for 2 years and head right back to New York. So I'm an East Coaster. I'm originally from New Jersey. And then a job landed in my lap right after I got the diploma and said, why don't you stay a little bit longer? And here I am 19 years later.
Did you never move back to, I think you moved back to New York.
I did. I didn't want to make it, too cumbersome a response. But yeah, from 2010 to 2013, my now wife and I moved back to New York for 3 years. She did her MFA there as she transitioned into TV screenwriting. And then once she got her diploma, we turned the truckster right back around and came back to LA.
I love it here.
I love it here. I've got East Coast sensibilities and East Coast kid at heart, and my extended family's all back there. But there is nowhere else I want to live. And as I've said to you before, the thing I love most about LA, beyond the 330 annual days of sunshine, is that no idea is too crazy here.
Oh yeah,
absolutely none. And while that does make for some dreamer types that you kind of know are never going to get anything done, it also makes for some of the most interesting conversations you're ever going to have, because no matter how wild whether it's a TV idea, film idea, tech idea, business idea, whatever it is, no one is going to tell you, well, that's fucking insane and you shouldn't do it. They'll say, tell me more, let's talk about it. And I find that to be like very, very, very encouraging. Whereas back on the East Coast, it was a lot of kind of dream killing, if that makes sense.
That doesn't make sense, is probably what they said.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. How are you going to pay for that? Which are all very, very practical questions. But it's like, hey, relax. I'm not writing checks yet toward any of this shit. Yeah. I'm just dreamscaping this out.
Yeah.
So that is probably what I love most about LA and probably California more generally.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just naturally like that. So whenever people 100%. Say no, then it's like, oh, okay, then that just makes me want to do it more. And that means I'm right.
Well, for years, I've wanted to give you the hard sell to move out here. But at the same time, I said, if I know Ward, the more I say, do something, it might actually make him recoil. Or why is he selling me so hard on this? And California is not without its problems, but like as, you've evolved, and we'll get into all that, but like as you've evolved, I'm like, man, I don't know, dude, like your kind of what mindset these days and the openness of it, like, is screaming for out here.
Yeah.
So that's as hard as I'm going to sell it to you, but like that is the truth.
I feel at home out here. There's no doubt about it. And we randomly came here, funny enough, because of my daughter. Because we had to get out of the Texas heat. I was going to have the kids for like 5 days because their mom's out of town. And like, we're not doing this in Dallas.
Yeah.
It's like 109 degrees. And so I was thinking, like, where's the coldest place to go? So I was thinking the mountains like Colorado or something.
Right.
And Betty, my daughter, is 9, and she said, no, I want to go to Los Angeles, California.
Where there's a mini heat wave happening, but it's still not a Dallas heat wave. Let's go. Yeah, I got you.
And man, I've been going to yoga. My yoga spot, Core Power, that I go to in Dallas, is one of them at least. They have a location like 5 minutes away from here.
Right.
And walking out at like 7 a.m. and feeling the crisp air in the morning and the night. The cooling down in the morning and evenings is just that feels so nice.
The nights here, even in the valley, even during the worst. I mean, we're here talking about the weather, but let's be honest. Like, this is a big feature out here. The nights are fucking magic.
Oh yeah,
the nights are magic. Some of the best hangs, have just been on back porches. 3 to 5 people just enjoying this place as it cools down. So
hell yeah,
welcome, brother.
Yes, and we are brothers, and
we are.
That's how we met. Is we met pledging into the Sigma Chi, rushing the Sigma Chi fraternity our freshman year of college,
which is extremely ironic considering where we went to school was decidedly not Greek, and that was actually a big selling point for me when I was picking colleges.
You had no intention of joining a fraternity.
I had absolutely no intention of joining a fraternity, and got invited to a couple of rushes, and I said, "Oh God," I was kind of kicking and screaming. But you start meeting people like Ward, and you say,
and Frank,
all right. Let me think about this. Let me give it its proper due diligence. And in retrospect, I don't know what college would have looked like, had I not joined the fraternity. But still, some of my best friends to this day. And while there's not everything is positive about fraternity life, I'd say on balance, it was far more good than bad with this particular group of dudes.
No doubt. And yeah, I had a lot of preconceived notions about what fraternities were coming from Texas, and just seeing kind of a little bit from outsider's view in high school of that fraternity culture. And I was like playing in a punk rock band.
Yeah.
I was very much like, I'm not going to go do a fraternity and be part of some conformist organization or something. And I went to that first Rush event. Eric Kroll, who I had dinner with last night,
funny.
He was our Rush chairman.
Yep.
And he called me multiple times, and I finally was like, fine, I'll go, because I played football my first semester, and then I got injured, so I couldn't play football anymore. And that was my whole social scene at Brown. And then I, like, being 18 years old, I felt, looking back, it was probably I was going through depression, but it's like that community that I had built the first semester was gone. Basically, I didn't want to be around, and it's all self-inflicted. It's not like they left me, but it's like I didn't want to be around them because it depressed me.
Yeah, I hear that, and it's interesting because to put two of us in the same room, it's like the start of a sitcom, right? Like we couldn't be more different outside of maybe height, right? Like you got Ward, like this, Dallas guy, football player, the big personality and the drawl and everything like that. And I'm like this neurotic Jew from New Jersey who's like worried about getting his problem sets done.
But 90s hip hop.
Well, it's funny. Funny you mention that.
We don't even have to get that specific.
Oh no, we can get that specific if you want. But the reality,
your memory's better than me. I think you fried less brain cells than me at Brown.
It was interesting because look, I always say the value of college has certainly been rightfully called into question in recent years and popularized. And look, the reality is it's not for everybody, and that's totally fine. But I will say, when you show up and meet people who are just so completely different from you in so many ways, that's the real education. That's really what you're paying for. The reality is an economics class is an economics class is an economics class. Sure, yeah, you've got different esteemed professors at different schools who you might want to study under or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's most of your learning is not happening in the classroom. And so when you have people who are just come from completely different worlds, and you figure out what that connective tissue is, man, that's where all the light bulbs go off.
That's right.
And I can tell you specifically, you spend a lot of time on this podcast with your guests, really kind of, making them feel good and asking very, kind of generous questions that let people go off and talk about themselves. You are definitely someone who I put on my Rushmore, if I can blow some smoke up your ass, but who I put on my Rushmore of college friends, of just people I learned the most from, which may be a little surprising to you.
It is.
Okay, but let me put it in perspective.
Like during college or like in recent years?
No. Well, both really. But let me put it this way. As I said, I came to college like real grade grubbing, very just, the running joke on me was that I was like always in my room and on my computer, right?
Yes.
And to some degree, I'm still that guy. But, getting an award, getting to know some of the other guys started to make me, sort of realize like, okay, it's bigger than grades. It's bigger than classes. And then junior year, our housing situation was such that I wound up with the room next to you.
That's right.
And Pat.
First floor.
Right. And like, I hear a sitcom starting there, right? Because you've got like the totally neurotic guy on the one side and the two guys who were, I mean, how would you characterize your and Pat's like den of iniquity? It was just
like you said. But yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun, and I rarely attended class. I oftentimes had borrowed your notes to help me prepare for exams, I believe. And I just like did not have that drive to go do those things when I was in college. And it's funny now because I read like 50 nonfiction books a year or something. But back then I just couldn't get my arms wrapped around that. And I think I went from Woodrow High School where I grew up, and I grew up in the same neighborhood till I was in 12th grade. And I was I would say to a certain degree, an overachiever in high school. And I just did everything, every activity. I never had free time, sports, musical, one act play, blah, 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 class president. And then when I got to Brown and when I couldn't play football anymore, because football was the same thing. That was a full-time job.
Yep.
And for the first time in my life, it was like, whoa, it's second semester freshman year when we met.
Yep.
It's like, wait, I don't have to do anything. Like, I don't have any commitments other than school. And like, school was at the bottom of the barrel in high school also. It was all the extracurriculars, but I had no extracurriculars really. And it was this taste of freedom. And man, and also for me, I'm meeting people. I grew up in Dallas my whole life, and going to Brown, that's like going to another world. And then everyone I met, you feel like I was different to you. It's like everyone was different to me. And I just like was drinking water through a fire hose of trying to go climb probably the social ladder that I had reached the top of in high school, but I had to start from ground zero at college, especially after football was over. And that was my number one focus is how to navigate this new social structure that I'm living in. I want to go to the top of it.
Well, it's funny because you were so hyper conscious of that, but you wouldn't.
I am now. Well, I think then I was just like,
well, you were such a
going with the flow.
You were, and I think still are, such a natural connector and beacon for a lot of other people who were probably trying to find their social circles at the same time. And I don't know if you were conscious of that, but it was immediately evident, like even from the very first rush. It's like, wow, like it's just this like big friendly dude who wants to talk to everybody and like genuinely, sincerely wants to talk to everybody. He's not, just with the jocks or with the pretty people or the whatever. It's just like, if you're in Ward's orbit, he's immediately going to say, tell me everything about you. Please. Like you were just this kind of natural sponge. And on the one hand, you were picking up information, but you were also making that other person feel very seen. And that is just something you naturally radiated, and I think that drew a lot of people to you. I mean, look, and let's back it up with some data, right? When we were, I didn't know it was going to be such a frat-centric show. I'm not like the kind of guy wearing my letters around, but to use that as an example, every year, you have a rush chairman, and typically our fraternity would bring in, somewhere on the order of 12 to 18 new guys every year. And then we made Ward rush chair, and suddenly we had a housing problem because we got like 42 pledges.
That's right.
All right. I mean, these are real fucking numbers, right? And we look at that and say, hey, look, there's all kinds of reasons why that might have happened. But the reality was Ward was somebody who just people naturally gravitated toward, and who, I think it's funny that you had a band at one point called the Party Police, because Ward kind of needs to make sure everyone's having fun. And if someone looks like they've got the thumb up their ass against the wall, the word's like, whoa, no, unacceptable. Let's go. Here's a drink, or I don't mean to make it sound like too fratty in that way, but you were very, very concerned, whether you realized it or not, that everybody else was feeling included and having a good time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's something that like you can, I mean, some people can develop that, but that was just something you were gifted with. So let me serve you that platter of compliments. And I'll tell you something that you did for me that I'm sure you didn't think twice about it, but this was like a good way to encapsulate like the Ward effect on Frank in college. That same junior year when we were living next door to each other, it was like this sort of beautiful give and take, right? It was, whether it's like you needed the notes or, needed to borrow something or whatever. Or if I was like having a shit day at 2:30 on a Tuesday and you were like, let's go take a bong rip and like talk about it or whatever. And like next thing you know, I'm high on Ward's couch while he's slapping his upright bass. I'm like, these are friends you need in college. And it was amazing. But the thing I was talking about specifically was there was one night where it was just kind of run of the mill night, not like a big party night or anything like that, but we were hanging out in another brother's room, Kobe, in fact. And it was probably me, you, him, maybe one or two other people. And we were just having like a chill, like hitting a bowl or whatever, and we were all like stoned but not stupid,
right.
Like coherently stoned, and just kind of like cracking jokes here and there. And you look over at me and you're like, I really like hanging out with you this way. Like and what I took in that moment doesn't sound like a profound thing, but it kind of was. What I took from you in that moment was like, number one, don't take yourself too seriously, and number two, you can connect on a lot of different wavelengths, and you might want to access this one a little bit more. That's what I took from that, and I walked away from that and I was like, I feel closer to Ward, but I also feel like I'm even knowing myself a little bit better. And that's not just you can make the weed jokes all day. It's not really so much about that. But I mean, like many have said that the real goal of intoxicants and so on and so forth is to figure out what are the good things that come from that, and then how do you find that stuff without the use of those intoxicants later?
That's right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you didn't know it. You probably was just an off-the-cuff remark, but I was like, holy shit, and you feel the ground shift a little bit. So
that's amazing.
Thank you for that. And yes, I do have a good memory, and that's like one of those things that stuck with me.
I love that. And, I had no recollection of that.
Of course not.
And but yeah, I feel like back then I subconsciously behaved in a lot of ways. I was just literally going with the flow. I wasn't like, I'm going to say this to make Frank feel better or something, but now I have a lot of self-awareness about these things now, and it's like, whoa. And I talked about this on a recent episode, actually, and it's like I used to, at work, have this mentality of I want to, be the top producer. I want to outproduce, everyone and be number one, and I've got to go just use my sheer willpower and force to go to the top. And now I'm really working on this shift, like reading like the Tao Te Ching and all this Buddhism and Tao literature, and they talk about like the art of doing, not doing. And it's like, wait a minute, I know I can shift my perspective in a way following this, and I'm starting to feel it now that I've been really working on it. And it's like you can actually put in way less effort and get way more production if you can shift your perspective.
Totally.
And like just this, very similar to what you're saying. And I'm sure, hopefully, and I feel like you've definitely embraced that. And and then you just become that, you're never going to leave the old self behind.
Right.
But you just evolve into these new hybrids of yourself.
And you know how to referee that old self a little bit better. Like you have that self-awareness to say like, is it really worth pulling the all-nighter for this? Is it real, like what's going to be the collateral damage? Is it, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, like we are who we are, but, as you start to build around that and figure out like how to manage to your anxieties, manage to your strengths and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of self-acceptance that comes with that,
And I had a lot of anxiety around me doing schoolwork, you know, because I would procrastinate it all and always wait till the last minute and then try to figure things out or write 40-page papers at night. God. And I dealt with so much anxiety around schoolwork, and that's probably why I didn't do it, because I never could. And every year, first day of first semester, like, I'm going to class every class, and I'm going to make straight A's this semester. And then, like, after the first week, I'm like, maybe we should just play the bass instead of go to class.
I can vividly remember the first semester of junior year when we both had signed up with a couple other guys, an accounting class. And I just remember the very first day.
You're making me sweat saying accounting class.
It was an accounting class, and the very first day you skipped it. And I just remember being like, Ward, where were you in accounting? And you were like, it's the first day. And I was just like, the fuck, dude? Like, if there's any class you're gonna go to, it's the first day. But never, here's the notes. But yes, that happened.
Do you know the best story of me not attending class is senior year?
Oh, God.
Civ 153. I still remember.
Shout out to Civ.
Never went to that class. Never took a test.
Jeez.
Never. I forgot that I was taking it. I thought I had dropped it.
Oh my God.
And then I was checking my grades, and I was like doing the double major in urban studies and OPM.
Yep.
But I mean, I was just barely getting out of Brown alive in 4 years. And so every class that I passed counted. And that was actually like went towards urban studies, I believe. And I was checking, like we did back then, by phone at like winter break. And I called in, and it's like, Civ 153, pass. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I'm like,
God.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, God. These diplomas are devaluing as we speak. Yeah. This is fantastic.
Yes.
Jeez, my God. But, look, the fact that, I listened to your podcast, and the fact that you're like, constantly at work conferences, but ducking out of the conferences to go have conversations with people. I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Like, that is pretty much Ward in college and saying, am I going to get more out of this lecture, or am I going to get more out of this like very focused discussion with this person who I really want to absorb something from? And it's like, I've managed podcast networks in the past, and I have heard many podcasters say this, that regardless of their audience size, it's just like, what other environment am I going to get where I am going to get a one-on-one conversation where we're both like really focused, really dialed in, and not even like not in the midst of a party or whatever where there's other distractions. And it's like, hey, look, if people want to come and listen, that's fucking fantastic. But if nothing else, I am gonna get something out of this conversation. That other person's gonna get something out of this conversation, and like that's enough. Right? Like, that is enough to make this worth doing.
Oh, yeah. I think about that constantly, this process of starting this podcast. I've done I had some other podcast shows, but really starting Truckin' on this year and thinking about it, like I'm doing an episode a week. So at the end of the year, and sometimes more than that, but I'm going to have 50 hours plus of one-on-one conversations with people who I love, really.
You're a fucking, you're a star. I don't know why you don't, you should be like right up there with like the next like Anthony Bourdain or like, and let me explain why. I mean, I don't know anyone who does such a wide breadth of different things and fucking follows through on them. Like, at different times over the last decade, it's like there's Ward doing an Iron Man, with a torn muscle. Like, there's Ward fucking writing a book, starting a podcast, it's obviously songwriting for God knows how long. And it's like there's almost nothing. Oh, Frank, hey, I'm opening for Ludacris next weekend. I'm like, who are you? Like, this is the most interesting man in the world. And I look at you and I just say, there are a lot of people who say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And for, life gets in the way. I get that. But your commitment to follow through on virtually all of it is unmatched. And like, it's for that reason that I'm like, this guy should, whether it's, people look up to certain personalities, be it, Dax Shepard or, there's the Roganites and like whoever else. But it's like, when you want to look at someone who's like as open-minded as it gets, interested in hearing absolutely all perspectives with no judgment, and is going to take what he gets from that and turn it into something, almost always, it's like, it's a skill that is innate to you, but you've only refined it more. And it's like we need more words out in the world, letting people know that it's okay to be this open-minded and to actually commit to a few things to see what you're really all about. Does that make sense?
I'm glad I'm wearing my sunglasses.
Oh, man. No.
I mean, seriously.
And I've known this about you pre-podcast, like for a very, very long time, but that's who you are. And if not, like I said, you make other people feel really good when they're on your podcast, but I think you should know how you reflect back.
Man, that really means so much to me.
You got it, man.
And I am so glad to get you here. And I was, whenever I do these creative ventures of mine, which have been countless since we've known each other, I always call you. You're at the top of my list to tell you, because
an honor.
You're always a trusted voice. You're discerning, and you tell me the truth too. And I get a lot of, oh, I love that song.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Like, great idea at work. Like, people tend to not argue or like.
Sure.
I'm not looking for arguments, but I'm just looking for like some help. You know?
I get
and
it.
some critiques. And it's a lot of times I don't get that, but I always get that from you. And I
appreciate that, man.
And it also lights a fire under me too, because you're like, think through this before you start a podcast. And I mean, we're going to get into you right now, but this is, thank you for being on this. I was like getting you to be on the podcast. It's a good get for me, because I was like, if Frank's going to do the podcast, that means that my podcast does not suck.
Oh, man, no, please. I like anything for you, man. But
I know, but I just like, I was like, fuck yeah, Frank's coming. Like, let's do this. And but I'm everything you said just like really means a lot, and it made me emotional. And it still is. But let's get into Frank.
All right.
And so, age 12 to 22.
So age 12 to 22, right? So we're talking about like kind of middle school to the start of college. So I say this not as a braggadocious asshole, but just like for perspective, great big middle class town, population about 80 to 100,000. And when I say like middle of the bell curve, everything, I couldn't be more literal about that. I think that year, the year I graduated, there's like 360 high schools in New Jersey. I think we were ranked like 180. Like we were like just dead set.
Public high school,
great big school, 3,000 students,
wow.
Graduating class of 700. But, middle school, high school, just top of the class, grades. Extracurriculars as well. But like, I played basketball for a long time, but I was 6'3" when I was 14. So you go from being like the dominant center to the less dominant power forward to the not at all dominant small forward.
6'3" at 14.
Yes, but then everyone started growing up around me, and the lack of natural talent shone through. So so I wasn't going anywhere with sports, but just really, really like dedicated, hardcore student. And, my real love was music, and not playing it so much, but more the fandom and the business of music. And that's, who doesn't like music? Yeah, sure. But I took it to a different level. And that is every bit of money that I, either earned doing chores or, paper routes or whatever it is, like all went back into music.
Yeah.
And when you went to Frank's house, like it was always the biggest music collection among my peers by a factor of 5 to 10x at all times.
What was like the thing that you think that like you're the first record or artist that really like made this a passion?
God, good. That's a great question. So I was definitely babysat, to go pre-12 years old, babysat by MTV growing up. And it's actually one of the best.
That's very cool parents.
Oh,
I didn't get to watch MTV till I got to Brown.
I don't know what their motivation was, or frankly, it's like, look, middle-class household with 2 kids. kids. It's just like anything that can keep your kids busy. It's like, and I have 2 kids myself. I really get it. But it wound up being like the greatest gift because I wasn't just interested in the music itself. I was interested in the videos. I was interested in the personalities, the interviews, the release schedules, just like how it all worked. And, you know, the first records I ever bought with my own money were 2 cassettes. And they bought them on the same day with what money I'd saved up. I paid for them in quarters. And it was the Beastie Boys' License to Ill and Run DMC Raising Hell.
Damn.
And I listened to those until my ears bled. And my parents would like catch the curse words here and there. And they were like, oh, what the fuck? We grew up in the 60s. What are we going to say? Like, are we really going to tell them not to listen to this stuff? And it kind of went from there. So I would say that, you know, I was already a big music fan, but like that's when I started to take ownership of it. And, you know, my resources were actually like going toward it. Yeah. And I would say like the purchase of those 2 albums was like, okay, I'm in this for the long haul. And so, you know, to wrap up your initial question, it was, you know, it was schoolwork, it was music, it was my friends, and then, you know, worked my ass off from, you know, this kind of rather blah public school to get into Brown, and I was so excited. I got up there, it was my vibe immediately, and I said,
I have a question.
That's where I'm going.
I have a question to backtrack about your school. School was tough for me.
Okay.
Did it come naturally to you? Was it like, damn, I'm good at this?
It was, you know, honestly, the quick answer is yes. And it was, you know, as early as like kindergarten, first grade, I was just like, okay, this shit comes natural. And that's not to say that I didn't study my ass off.
Of course.
You know, like I've actually had this discussion in the last couple of years with good friends of mine who from high school who I still talk to, and they were like, yeah, we were content to not study and get the A-. You'd stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to get the A+.
Yeah.
And that's just a balance. You decide what's important to you. And in retrospect, I probably should have pared that back. You know, it's probably somewhere in the middle. But, you know, when it started to get harder, you know, come like, you know, sophomore, junior year, when you actually had to like put in, you know, more study time, I just did and got by on 4.5 hours of sleep most nights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a combo, and it's just like Michael Jordan. You can have you can have that talent, but if you don't go work your ass off, or like, then you're not going to be getting into Brown. You're not going to go on to do everything you did, and to recognize like the talent and seize it, I think is very admirable from such a young age.
It was the seizing it, but I am the first to say I was not the smartest kid there. There were other kids who were just, you know, they didn't care as much.
But you outworked them.
That's the only thing. It's like, you know, I'm not, you know, patting myself on the back for being some kind of workhorse. But the reality was, it was like, there were some kids who were like, yeah, I'll take the A- and get some sleep. Yeah. You know, and I was just like, okay, this is where I can differentiate myself, is just to put in the hours. But there were definitely kids who were naturally smarter, no question. You know, and they've gone off and done great things. But yeah, it came easy, and when it got hard, I just doubled down on the work.
And did it make you feel seen? Making the straight A's, did you get like your parents, were they very excited, or were they?
Oh no, my parents loved it, but they were very much like, don't talk to the pitcher during the no-hitter.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. They were just like, fucking let him do his thing. He's up late. We know that's probably not the best thing, but he's getting it done.
Yeah.
And they've even said, you know, they've just said like, look, you were your own force of nature. We couldn't tell you from squat about like how to do it or how not to do it. So we just kind of like, let's get out of his way. And I don't mean that in a passive way. I mean, I think they actively made that decision to just let me run.
I think I'm patting myself on the back again for identifying you as this very smart workhorse, yet down to earth, and we have the music commonality, and that's why I think I was drawn to you for your school notes as well. And but man, but it's so impressive to go do it, and you had the best notes that there were in the whole fraternity.
My mom was a school teacher. My mom taught, you know, grade school for 30 some odd years, so like penmanship was a big thing for me.
You can read them; they're all clear, and then I could go ask you about them, and you can explain like, yes, dude, like, here's what it is. And I didn't know that about you. When we met, all I knew was music. Right? That was our immediate connection because we weren't living in the house at that point when we were freshmen. And I mean, we hit it off about music immediately. And so it was always about music. But then I think like through sophomore year, I started like, oh, let's see. And then when you were next door neighbors, that all makes sense now.
Oh man, what a gift that was.
I didn't think of you that way until this conversation. And actually, I think of you as my creative go-to person from the fraternity and from Brown. But yeah, you were a fucking hard worker, and it's amazing. So
appreciate that, man.
Then you made it to Brown.
I did.
Did you apply it? Was that your number one choice?
To be honest with you, Princeton was my number one choice. But in retrospect, that was it all worked out the way it should.
Oh yeah.
The thing is that I grew up about 30 minutes away from Princeton. And it was sort of I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder in high school, and we can get into that if you want. But the I'll show them was I'm going to get into Princeton.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't even about Princeton. It was about like, that's the school up on the hill, not literally, but the school up on the hill that everyone here knows and everyone here would be jealous of.
You were the townie.
Yeah, kind of.
Like
yeah.
Providence, they're like the townies are like
right, exactly. And so I thought like that's where I wanted to go. Yeah. And looking back, it could not have been a worse fit for me. Right. It's just a little more stodgy, stiff. I don't want to say that creators don't come from Princeton, but it's not really what it's known for. And so in retrospect, like the cards fell where they should have, and I couldn't have been happier about that. And I think I realized that like once I got the Princeton rejection letter, I was like pissed off for a day, and then it all turned around really. I was like, oh yeah, like that's not how this was supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. And with a Jewish mother 30 minutes away in college, that also might have been the death of me. So it all worked out the way it should have.
I actually wanted to go to Dartmouth was my first choice.
Okay.
And I'd never heard of any Ivy League schools really other than Harvard and Princeton.
Yep.
But I got recruited by all of them for football. Yep. And I applied early decision to Dartmouth because I loved the idea of that so much.
Yep.
And
like Animal House is based on a Dartmouth fraternity, and
I'd never even seen Animal House till I got to college.
Yeah, of course.
I was very sheltered, believe it or not. But then I applied myself early decision to Dartmouth.
Okay.
And didn't realize that as a football recruit, you're supposed to send your application to the football department, and then they slide it right in. And the football coach is like, "You did what?" Because I got denied from Dartmouth. I was like, "Well, I thought you said that you wanted me to come to Dartmouth." They're like, dude, like, you got to go through the process, bro. And again, like, I was sad for a day, and like, okay, I'd never heard of that school 6 months ago anyway. I thought I was going to be playing football at Texas A&M or something. And then the Brown, Coach Michaels from Brown started calling me, but I can't think of a better, at least East Coast,
100%
for either of us to go to. Man.
No.
Like Brown was such a like perfect fit for our kind of, eclectic.
100%. I was very, very, very happy with there. And I God knows what the world of college is going to look like, as our kids come of age. But and I will never force my kid into one college versus another. But
college from my perspective.
Or college period. 100%. Yeah. Who the fuck knows?
Like
who knows?
10 years.
Who knows? But if that is the path they want to go, I hope they take a long, hard look at it.
Yeah. 100%. Well, then that's where we met. How was college? It's fraternity life. What else do you want to hit on?
Two different worlds in college.
Yeah.
The first two, okay, I was in a long distance relationship with my high school girlfriend. Now, I don't want to tell anyone that when you go off to college, you have to break up with your high school. Okay, my in-laws, who are two of my favorite people on the planet, they met when they were 16. They are as in love today as they were then. Like, it can work. I don't think as a rule. But I will say, if you're looking at the actuarial tables on this, it's probably not going to last. And you're also denying both of yourselves a lot of the college experience, that sort of explosion of meeting new people from the very beginning. So I look at those first 2 years, and even though I tried to play the role of like, hey, where's the keg, guys? It was a darker experience for me. And then, as you might remember, junior year comes around, she and I break up very amicably, but we break up before the start of junior year. I lose 55 pounds. I get in the gym. I'm starting to feel very different about myself. And suddenly I'm waking up before the alarm clock in the morning. I'm like excited to get the day started. I'm excited. Who am I going to meet today? I am as much as I was like, a conscientious student, I woke up to the day in a very, very, very different way. And so junior and senior year were absolutely just the most soul warming times for me. I can't think of a better expression, really. And to the point that when we graduated, the night before actual graduation, I was just like crying on the steps.
Me too.
I was crying on the steps, not necessarily because like, oh my God, college is over, but I was like, man, I was just getting started.
Yep.
I was just getting started. And so, yeah, I mean, college was two different worlds for me, but I'm glad it went out on a good note.
Again, lots of similarities, and I felt the same way. It's like, damn it, I spent all my first life through high school getting to this level, and then I spent my 4 years at Brown, like I'm here, and then like shit, I got to go, like start the
real world,
a low level job, and get paid $35,000 a year, and be bossed around and have to go wear a suit every day.
In your case, go on tour with a band.
Yeah, well, I did. I worked a corporate job for 2 years, and that was really tough for me. I didn't know what to do, but I was literally crying when we graduated. I didn't want to have to make any changes. I was in a very happy place.
Yep.
But such is life. So then you graduated, and we graduated in the year 2000 for those that don't know. And that was, a pretty interesting time because it was like the peak of the economy and everything's booming.
It's pre 9/11, right?
Tech boom and all this opportunity. We just got cell phones. The internet, I didn't know it existed till I arrived at Brown.
Right.
We got these email addresses. I'm like, what is email? When I was a freshman. And so very early stage internet. And you graduated. What did you go do?
So my first move, and you can probably put this in the biggest mistakes ledger of life. I went off to be an investment banker.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Which if you're still listening at this point, you might say this guy does not fucking sound like a banker. Yeah. And I without going too far into it, look, when you grow up in, and I'm not crying about it or anything like that, but when you grow up in like squarely middle class neighborhoods, you don't really learn about going after passions. You don't really learn about going out, what do you actually enjoy doing? Money is usually the only metric you hear about. Like, I don't know about you, but
same.
Growing up, most of the parents of my friends and classmates, some of them were perfectly nice people, but they generally seemed just kind of angry and tired and pissed off leaving for work, pissed off coming home from work, and never talking about their work, just talking about money. And so there was really the kind of only metric, the only barometer I had for success at that point. And when I heard that you could be an investment banker, netting six figures right out of college, I was like, well, that's the story I want to tell when I go home to Old Bridge, New Jersey. Is like, hey, look, everyone, I made it. And it was a totally external facing search for validation. Like, I wanted to impress other people. The story I told myself was like, oh, you can live in New York City and you can pay down your college debt and blah, 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 blah. But like, I showed up that first day of training at the investment bank into like an ocean of 150 khaki and blue shirted, analysts and said, holy fuck, what have I done? What have I done? These are not my people. All anyone was talking about was who had the smallest cell phone, because if you remember in 2000, the smaller the cell phone, the more the more expensive it was. Yeah. And they were already talking about expected first year bonuses. I was like, guys, we haven't done a lick of work yet. Like, what the fuck? So I toughed it out for a year and a half. And 9/11 happens in the middle of that. And then mass layoffs wash over Credit Suisse. And I've never been so happy in my life to get a pink slip at that point. Because I think I'd kind of telegraphed to most people I worked with, who I got along with, but I was like, I ain't in this for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't for me. I'm glad I'm learning a few things, but this is, and what, not just the 80 hours a week. It's just like, I have no interest in what's happening.
I don't think I could have done it. I mean, I worked like 8 to 5 for a family-owned real estate company, and that was I was considering driving my car like into a telephone pole, like not to injure myself, but just to get in a little fender bender that didn't hurt anyone else, so that I could not have to go into the office.
So I could not have to get you. God,
and then I was like, okay, then I can deal with going to the shop to pick it up. Like, this is going to buy me like 20 hours of the next month that I don't have to.
Well, let me put this into perspective. Let me put this into perspective for anyone ever considering like going into high finance. Look, if that's your thing, okay, if mergers and acquisitions and private equity and shit are your dinner table conversation, have at it. But here's the thing. I remember not long into the whole exercise, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting at my desk. It's like a Wednesday. I've been there all night, and there are 2 associates standing over me. And in the world of investment banking, the low man is the analyst, that was me, and then the associates are the next level up. And these 2 greasy-haired associates are standing over me, arguing about who was going to, quote-unquote, get me from 5 to 8 a.m. because I'm working on projects for both of them. And in that moment, I just started laughing deliriously, and they didn't quite find it funny, but I was like, this is the height of insanity. Like, we are not curing cancer. We are not fucking curing cancer. And then just to put a bow on this, the morning of 9/11, I woke up and I was living 14th Streets north of the World Trade Center. And I wake up and I walk outside, and one building has come down, the other one is on fire. Now, everyone's got their 9/11 stories, especially if they were in New York, but that's not really the point of this story. But I'm gobsmacked for sure, and I'm like a zombie. I walk back into my apartment. I don't know what to do, and my phone rings, and it's a different associate, and he says, "Frank, what time are you going to be in today?" I said, "The towers just fell. What do you mean, what time am I going to be in today?" He's like, "Yeah, what time are you going to be in today?" I said, I don't think I'm coming in today. I don't think this is really the time. He's like, "Well, were you hurt?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Was someone in your family hurt?" I go, "No." He's like, "Well, then I'll see you in 20 minutes. And he hangs up on me. I'm not saying every banker is a sociopath. Okay, I worked with some great ones. I really did, who just loved the sport of it all.
Man,
but that was when I would tell that story. Some people, they didn't even understand why that was problematic. I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
That makes my heart hurt for him worse than it does
totally.
For you.
And you know what? I didn't show up, by the way. I was like, fuck. I was like, fuck this. Fire me. I don't care. Like, this is just stop it. But that should like give you some kind of perspective. And like, yeah. So yeah, I got out of that, and the blessing of that was, as I said, I was always the music guy. I wanted to go into music. Yeah. And so I went through the Brown Alumni Network. I reached out to 30 different people. I know this because I kept track of it all. 3 people got back to me. 1 person offered me an unpaid internship.
At Elektra?
At Elektra Records.
Elektra Records.
Under Warner Music Group. So, yeah, no, dude, I appreciate that. And I went there and I worked for free for 3 months, and just kind of showed and proved. And
what did you feel like going into that office the first day?
Oh man!
Were you just like, I'm fucking home, baby?
Dude,
like,
it was that feeling because I was recruited. I started in the rock A&R department, and we were right up against the urban A&R department. So you walk in, and it is just fucking bass thumping. Just I don't know how I'm going to get anything done, but oh my god, this is a vibe. Like, this is so fun. And I was making $24,000 a year. Right. Yeah. So I went from 6 figures and having an assistant to $24,000 a year and getting coffee and all that kind of shit. But I quickly showed, like, number 1, work ethic, but number 2, like, I also know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I am not showing up here because I think, this would be fun. And, let's go see how the other side lives. No, I was like, I'm here to make records.
You're like, you don't understand how fucking obsessed I am with music, bro.
And I think, and the guy who hired me, who was a Brown alum, I think he caught that real quick.
Yeah.
And we did records with Mark Ronson, Jason Mraz, Jet. Like, Stereolab, Bjork, Metallica, Missy Elliott. Like it was incredible. And one thing I really learned is that artists who are really, really fucking fantastic, who have really like earned their place, you know, in the history of rock and roll and so on and so forth, like are often the most fun and easy to deal with. It's the up and comers that are the pain in the asses because the egos are just so brittle. But, you know, working with all of the aforementioned, and I worked directly for the Cars frontman Rick Ocasek for a year while I was at Elektra as well. And, you know, R.I.P. passed away a year or two ago, was the biggest sweetheart on the planet. And he would walk around the offices talking to all the assistants and interns and ask what they were listening to and swapping mix CDs with them.
So how did you discover an artist, or did you tell me the coolest story from working at a record label, because that was always kind of on my mind.
Sure.
But I was on the artist side all through my 20s, and then I just went back into real estate, but I've always felt like that would be cool to be an agent or something like that in the entertainment business. But like, so what's like your biggest like war story? Or,
here's the coolest story. And this is not a sex, drugs, and rock and roll story at all. It's just an interesting sort of sign of the times. You know, 2000, 2001, 2002 was when the music industry was really starting to contract because piracy had really taken hold. And I was pretty sympathetic to piracy, to be honest with you, because for God knows how long we were all spending $18 on CDs for one or two songs that we liked, and the industry was capturing all the fucking surplus. Yeah. So when I heard about people like stealing tracks, I was like, you know, you kind of reap what you sow. And I also thought that, you know, people stealing tracks were also much more likely to buy those T-shirts and to go to those shows. So net, who knows? But no, the story I liked best really was actually working on the Jason Mraz record. Now, I'm not a big fan of singer-songwriter.
Was his hit song on that record?
Several of them.
Well, which one's the one I'm thinking of?
You and I Both, The Remedy. I'm not sure. I'm
blanking.
It might have been the second one. And to be honest, I haven't looked at that track list in a long time. That was not the first album. I think that might have been the second album.
I love that song.
Because he continued to blow up.
What's that song called?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember.
Okay,
but
I'm going to be my own producer while you keep talking.
But here's the thing. Here's why this was so great. At the time, record labels really were not interested in building anything from scratch. Because the industry was contracting, they were really looking to only sign bands who had already built up their followings. Yeah. You know, such that like the 0 to 1 step had already been kind of accomplished, and now it was taking them to the next level. It's just risk mitigation at the end of the day. But Jason Mraz was one who I'll say we found. I was not the first person to hear him, but I was definitely on the ground floor when we started getting the demos. And like, Jesus, it's not what I would listen to, but this kid can write songs, and he's got this voice like a canary, and we're like, oh my God. Anyway, but the story here really was that it was the one record that we worked on where it cost $80,000 to make. And this is compared to the $1 million+ budgets that were for most big major label records at that time. $80,000 to make. We really slow rolled it. We didn't push it hard at radio. He happened to have grown up in the same town as Dave Matthews, and Dave was nice enough. I'm not really a Dave Matthews fan either, but he took Mraz on the road, okay, which was, you know, basically, you know, just like almost baptizing him in front of all of these audiences.
Were you A&R?
I was A&R. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. Yeah. A&R is artist and repertoire. You recruit and develop talent.
And did you? So how did you get connected with Jason Mraz?
Yeah, so I wasn't the first to hear him, but he was living in San Diego, doing mostly like the coffee shop circuit. Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. And he eventually got a manager, Bill Silva, of Bill Silva Entertainment, and he's like a major domo of like Southern California concert promotion and so on and so forth. Incredibly nice guy who's just like easy to deal with. And he said, look, I got this kid. I got a producer lined up. We can do this fairly cheaply and let this bake organically. And that is just not something major labels were doing at the time. Yeah. And it took a year, but that record went platinum.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and was wound up being a major win, but not in the way that major labels, at least at the time, were used to doing it, where it was like, what do they sell in the first week? What do they sell in the second week? Not good enough? Fuck it, cut them. You know, it was much more patient than that. And I was like, yeah, that's the way to do it. and his fans will be with him forever because this was an organic build.
That's so cool.
So yeah, believe me, I'd love to tell you a story about, hanging someone off a balcony by their feet, or, projectile vomiting into the crowd or whatever it is. But like,
that story's much cooler to me anyway.
But like, that was just a real lesson in a lot of different kinds of business, but certainly in the music industry.
Being in the music industry for as long as I was never in a band that really dealt with major record labels, not at all.
Sure.
But I know many bands that did, and the vast majority of them got signed and dropped.
Yep.
And before their album came out,
yep.
And they go through all of this excitement, and they
yep.
get a big check, and then it's like, no, not happening. I mean, I think Elektra actually did that to a couple of Dallas bands.
I don't doubt it.
Hearing those stories, it sucks because and that's the nature of the entertainment industry, though. But I heard so many. Now Dallas has been fucking slaying it. We got Post Malone, Leon Bridges. Those two alone.
It's funny. I wanted to dislike Post Malone so bad, and then at the beginning of the pandemic, when he did like the Nirvana covers, I was like, holy shit, Logan even. Yeah, it's like, whoa! I did not know he was capable of this, and I was like, okay, respect where it's due. Like, this guy has got it, so respect to Post Malone. But like, look, I stop short of giving out too much advice to aspiring musicians these days. But it's like, whether you're a musician or an author, like, the idea of like the big label deal or the big publisher deal or whatever, it's like, think twice, because look, I get it, and it's a source of validation, but it really depends on, if you want career longevity, you got to make sure the roots are solid. And to your point, if before your album's even released, if they don't like it, it may never see the light of day.
And man, in this world we're living in, as a creative, I just don't understand. It's like, go hire, go hire a team that'll go work for you and use social media and all that's out there to connect with the masses and take advantage of it, and just bring in experts as you need them.
Totally.
And build that grassroots following.
I would say
same goes for podcasts. Same goes for writing books, by the way. It's like, you want to, yes. If I'm going to publish a book, would I like some giant publishing house to publish my book just so I could say they did?
Sure.
But how insane is that? That's almost as insane as the fucking investment banker telling you to go in. Like, if I can go create my own grassroots following and go call a fucking book printing company and publish the book and hire a great marketing executive to go help me market it. Yeah. Like, why take like a small percentage of this when I can get the whole thing? And it goes for every podcast.
And look, and I'm not going to say it never makes sense.
Right.
I'm not going to say it never makes sense. Sometimes it does, but I would just say, don't jump at the first offer that the universe is putting in front of you. Yeah. And really think it out. If you're like, hey, this label or this publisher is aligned in such a way, or I've seen them have success with creators similar to me, all right, look, it's worth looking into. But by and large, at least give yourself the chance to own and operate it yourself. Okay. And if you realize, like, all right, well, this is where I'm weak and this is where I need help, you can staff up around that, even in a budget conscious way from the jump, just to see, do I have something here?
Yeah. And obviously the reason a lot of people would want to do it is because you get a big ass check up front, right?
And that's it. It's the validation and it's usually the big check. But, the reality is like, the reason labels, do what they do, it's a hits driven business, right? Like 9 flops are paid for by the one hit, or at least that's kind of how it was historically. And so, it's going to be like some kind of crazy recoupable advance where even that big check is probably not going to be as big when it actually gets down to it, when things actually get signed and checks get handed over, and it feels good in the moment. But then what?
When do you do it? What artist benefits the most from signing with a major label, do you think? I know you're not doing this.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not doing this currently. But I would say like, let's put it this way. If you are, take someone who was like, a TikTok phenomenon, like an Ice Spice or something like that, and say, okay, I already have a following. Okay, I already can be doing endorsements. I already can pay my rent simply with my social media presence. Okay, if I'm endorsing products and so on and so forth. But if my vision is, whatever it is, like a 3-5 album outlook or touring with certain artists or what have you. And I don't necessarily like have the access or the wherewithal to go set that up myself, or even with a small team that I've hired around me. It could make sense to look at and say like, okay, well, how did Cardi B do it? How did Megan Thee Stallion do it? How did like my contemporaries or aspirational contemporaries, how did they do it? And if there is, it never hurts to meet with anybody, right?
Yeah, right.
And you meet with that A&R rep or that marketing manager or product manager who's like, here's the vision I have for you. And they say, Jesus, man, I never even thought about it that way. And we've got the resources to do it. It might make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that comes down to the people. And
it's a relationships business.
And that could be that A&R guy or gal, or it could be the artist that you want to go on tour with is part of Live Nation. And if you want to be part of Live Nation, you got to be on Elektra or Universal.
And and it's like anything else. You check references. You call those other artists, and say, hey, I'm thinking about signing. Tell me about your experience. Do you think this will work for me there? You know what I mean? Because they'd love to tell you, yeah, I'd love to be on a label with you, or they might say, run. Yeah. This sucks. I'm trying to get out of this contract. You never know.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
that's cool. Okay, so you left Elektra.
Yeah, and so because I don't want to bore the shit out of everyone with my entire like LinkedIn, recital, but the long and short of it is, I knew that I wanted to stay in entertainment. Went back to business school because the music industry was really imploding, and I said, let me go to LA, which I've always romanticized, and I wanted to be out west, but stay close to the music industry. And so when you're choosing a business school, it's kind of the New York or LA schools for the most part. Came out here to UCLA, and immediately after that landed a job with MySpace, where I wound up heading up operations for their music division for 4 years. And so my thinking was, okay, I want to stay in music, but at the time, 2006, 2010, when I was there, MySpace was very much, even though it eventually cratered as a social network, it was very much like the taste-making hub and cultural flashpoint of music at that time. Right? This is when MTV had already like completely shit the bed and sold out to mostly, reality-based programming. Streaming services didn't really exist yet in any kind of meaningful way. And it was just kind of this like blog era, social media, embryonic era of, creators exploding with their pages and so on and so forth. And so I went, kind of where the action was. And, look, another phenomenal learning experience, but, we were trying to keep the lights on by going, full-throated into music and licensing music and trying to have the biggest catalog, of all the music services out there. But the social networking side of MySpace was absolutely cratering relative to Facebook. So, after 4 years, I was like, I can't rearrange any more deck chairs. Like, I got to go, and I need a break. I need a break from this, and I need a break from the music industry. I thought I was like, I'm ready to go back to being a fan for a little while.
Yeah.
And so to kind of fast forward through the 2010 forward, attempted a startup in New York called Jobster. We were trying to be like an entertaining career-based Q&A website. Basically a series of Ask Me Anythings about different jobs, ranging from, neurosurgeon to janitor. Didn't matter. People could ask really pointed questions, and it was a great learning experience. But ultimately, really didn't have.
Who'd you do that with?
I did that with. I don't know to what extent I can shout out his name, but another fraternity brother
of
ours with Dan,
Dan
who was from the year. Below us, also smartest guy I know, who was also leaving his job. He was leaving his job as a corporate attorney, and we said, we both saved a little bit of money, nothing crazy, but we saved a little bit of money. We have a little bit of leash here to go try something. And if you remember 2010, I've heard you mention like Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week. And like, that was a real era of quit your job, everyone become an entrepreneur. It was
right after the Great Recession.
All that shit, and it was like, stop suffering for cash, go start your own thing, and so we did, and learned how to build a website from the ground up and how to monetize, really kind of how to sell it into the schools. There were a lot of colleges that were really interested in it, but it ultimately like wasn't really getting it just wasn't scaling to the point that it couldn't, it would help us pay a couple of bills, but not much more than that.
Yeah.
And I was about to get married and life was about to, real responsibility was about to start to kick in. So I ultimately abandoned that. And then worked a studio job with Legendary Entertainment for a while, where I was, among other things, running the Nerdist podcast network. About 40 podcasts there. That's really where I cut my teeth in the podcasting world. Fast forward to now, we can go back on whatever you want, but fast forward to now, I've been consulting independently for about 3.5 years, really since...
Free for me.
always. But, at a certain point I said, look, it was the start of the pandemic, 2 young kids in the house. We were going to be remote schooling for a while. Life was about to get really complicated. And I said to my wife, I said, listen, give me 6 months to try to build up a little consulting practice here, because I think we're going to need some newfound flexibility. My father was a microbiologist, and I had a pretty good idea from day one of COVID. I was like, this is not going to be a month or 2 months or 3 months. This could be on the order of years. So I better start to reshuffle my life a little bit to accommodate for that.
Yeah.
And my wife was super supportive. She's like, go for it. And, sure enough, had enough relationships and people knowing what I was capable of that I started doing, basically business and operations consulting for a slew of different companies, ranging from startups to kind of more established players. And, the eat what you kill mindset was something that was very, very new to me, to be completely honest. And there are, I was figuring out how to make the numbers work, but even today, there's certain leaner months where there's that pit in my stomach, and then there are other months where I'm turning work away, and I'm like, God damn it, I'd love to get back to some kind of steady state. But yeah, basically, what I tend to do most is, companies that are looking for seed funding or going into a Series A, who are like, we need a fresh business plan, we need a financial forecast, we need help with capital raising. They come to me, we put together a deal that works for them, and then I'm, on their squad for, call it 2 to 3 months at a time. And to be honest, I don't really like going longer than that. I know that most consultants kind of love retainer type situations where they're, just getting paid no matter what's going on. I actually don't like that. Number one, it stresses the relationship, and number two, frankly, I get bored. After 2 or 3 months of talking about your business. It's not an ADD thing. It's just I feel like I've absorbed what I want to absorb. I've accomplished the scope of work you've asked me to accomplish, and now I'm really ready to learn about something else.
Yeah, and you found the stage of building companies that you're passionate about, it sounds like.
Look, is it my dream job? I won't say it is, but what I will say is the lifestyle build around it has been super important. My kids are 8 and 6, and I got to tell you, I have missed very few golden moments.
That is awesome.
Over the last several years. And yeah, they drive me up the wall like everyone's kids do. No exceptions there. But got to see them through their toddlerhood really in a way that I think that, my parents never did, your parents probably never did, and so on and so forth. So more of a lifestyle build than anything. There are other things I certainly want to do, but, right now I work with cool people. I work on cool shit. And, it's another, the dirty little secret in there is that I'm also kind of interviewing those companies at the same time to see whether I'm if I really think they've got something and something that I would want to be a part of, pitching myself as becoming a full-time member of the team.
Yeah.
And at this point, there's been a couple where I was kind of close to that, but not quite. But I'm being really deliberate here.
That's amazing. Do you want to talk about any of them?
Listen, I for privacy reasons, I really can't name names. Yeah. But what I would say is the most frequent client type that I've been getting are usually companies, often in the podcast world, but some others who are at the intersection of entertainment and technology, who have a great idea and have a good track record in their respective fields and are trying to do something new, but they need someone to help put together sort of a coherent vision for them, both quantitatively and qualitatively, right? I've got the gift of numbers and I've got the gift of verbiage. And so I help them, kind of construct that and communicate it, as they are raising money. I'm often sort of the third or fourth voice in the room who, as we're kicking the tires on numerical assumptions and market outlooks, I'm like, yeah, thanks for asking. I've done that research. Let's go. So yeah, I mean, I'm staying mostly at the intersection of entertainment and technology, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It sounds perfect for you, actually. Yeah. So
some days.
Yeah. And then who knows? And maybe you find that company and it's like, boom, this is the one.
If I can get paid to find out if I want to work for you, I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's a good.
I kind of like that.
Model.
I'm not saying I figured it all out. I'm not saying I'm rolling in cash or anything like that. But I will say, like, at this stage of my life, and given the age my kids are at, this makes a lot of sense.
Hell yeah, man. Well, that's amazing.
So,
now, what advice would you give to your younger self? We may have already discussed this.
Sure. No. We've kind of touched upon it. And if I remember correctly from your previous podcast, you also asked, like, what's your biggest failure? I kind of like
coming up, but you can combine.
Well, let me combine these because let me flip them. Let me just basically flip them around.
Yeah.
Let me flip them around, and you'll see how it comes together.
Love it.
My biggest failure really was at too early of an age doing things or professional pursuits solely to impress other people, as opposed to even stopping and saying, but what do you actually want to do? I don't even mean I want to work in music or I want to work in banking. I mean, it's like, no, what do you actually want to do every day? Because, there are a lot of people who work in music, but they're not musicians. I'm not on the production boards. I'm not doing any of that. And so, I spent entirely too much time and energy trying to figure out, what would be impressive to other people. What's gonna, and don't get me wrong, in my 20s and early 30s, I capitalized on that, dating and, social circles and all that kind of stuff. But I was miserable at work. So the biggest failure really was not realizing at an early age, like, you don't want to be a banker. What the fuck? You don't want to be that guy. That's not you. But I really didn't wake up to that until I was really in my early 30s. So the biggest failure was like sort of a lack of self-awareness and a humility that sent me down the wrong path, in my opinion, for quite a few years. So the back end of that, of what would you tell your younger self, is just what other people think is absolutely irrelevant. This money metric that you've grown up knowing about, like, or grow up, like sort of, that's kind of burned into your brain. You've got to break that and really think about, like, functionally, what are the things that make you, like, want to wake up before the alarm clock? Because this ain't it. And, it's funny, I with my kids, even today, okay, as young as they are, I am constantly, and they're not aware of this, but, like, I am constantly watching how they do, what they naturally gravitate toward, because a lot of those things are very, very innate. Yeah. My son plays with Legos all day. Okay, well, many 6-year-olds play with Legos. Big fucking deal. But I watch, I'm like, Does he go out of his way to sort these Legos? Does he freestyle build? Does he build off directions? How does he actually interact with all of this? Does he draw it first and then build it? I don't know if he's going to be an architect or an accountant or whatever it is, but whether it's him or my daughter, every time she gets together with her friends, they make a movie. Every fucking time.
Wow, that's
Is she
cool.
going to be a director? Is she going to be a choreographer? I don't know, but I am watching them like a hawk to just figure out, and give a shit what their grades are in school. I don't care, but just what natural gifts do they have and gravitate toward, and just help them cultivate that as they go into middle school, high school, college, if they go to college, and so on. So to me, that is my number one job, is keeping them safe. And my number two job is making sure that they are ultimately going to be happy. And so, I'm trying, the positive thing to take away from my failures and my, misfires are, number one, I'm 45 and I'm still correcting for that. And I'm going to keep correcting for that. But number two, make sure that my kids are hyper cognizant of this at the earliest age possible.
Boom.
Okay? Because you can't ensure success in anything, but the earlier you start, okay, and the earlier you identify what your gifts are, the much more likely you will be to actually get to the level that you're ultimately capable of.
Yeah.
That's about as self-helpy as I'm going to get on this podcast.
I love it. Yeah. I'll chime in and say my spiritual teacher calls it your illusion self.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Versus your authentic self.
Right.
Authentic self. You hear that all the time, but what you don't hear people talk about all the time is the illusion self.
Right.
And that's like blame, shame,
Yep.
fear, obsessing over material possessions, like these things that don't matter.
Sure.
And that's what it is. And it was really ingrained in us, I think, like all of these things being these things that you want to achieve. And thankfully for me, like I was born with this ability for my skin to crawl when I get in these situations. And I mean, I like was mentioning to someone, I like have been on again, off again with alcohol and whatnot over the years. And I find like alcohol numbs me to my illusion self where I can go live life that way.
Yep.
But when I'm not on it, then the skin crawling goes to the next level, which now I honor and treasure that. And it's like that's something that really keeps me from even desiring, like I don't currently feel any desire to use any mind altering substances because I know it clears my channel for feeling. Is what I'm doing in flow? Is it being true to my authentic self, or is this illusion self bullshit that I've been like really? I mean, we've all been brainwashed with it so bad that you gotta like step back. So I found like the alcohol for me masks it and makes all this shit like seem cool, but really no longer. It did for a long time, and now even when I went back to drinking for a year last year, it's like it didn't do the trick. I was woke to this shit by that point, so it didn't really work. But
man, 99.999% of people will never ever reach your level of self-awareness, and like, God damn it, like not to just like go back on the word compliment train, but like Jesus Christ, man. And like I even like hearing that you tried drinking again for a year. Just like not so much because like I need another drinking buddy. I don't even like to drink that much. I'm a cannabis guy. But the reality is just like, hey, okay, I've gone from one extreme to the other. Is there a middle ground? Let's just investigate where I'm at with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I realize there could be some self-destructive things that happen in there, but it's just like, I love that you continually are self-aware enough to know when it's time to test the waters, when it's gone too far, how to pull it back and figure out what you learned from that.
I'm so grateful I did it. It really changed my perspective on the whole thing. And it's like now before it was like, I have to quit drinking or I'm going to die. Now it's like drinking it does not serve me.
Right.
And it's like, that fucking makes it a lot easier to deal with not drinking.
It does not serve me.
Gambling doesn't serve me, especially when I'm not drinking.
Right.
I don't fucking want to go get anxiety to win fucking $5,000 when I can like go make $5,000 doing my job and pay value for people. Way easier. And I feel good the whole time I'm doing it. Like all these things, there's so many. We could do a whole nother episode on it,
and maybe we will someday. Maybe we will.
I'd love it. We should just do it every time I come back to LA.
Oh God,
good reason to come.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
So moving into rapid fire.
All right, let's
go. What's your morning ritual?
All right, so I've got 2 kids, so my mornings are completely dictated by them. I'd love to tell you, 4:30 a.m. cold plunge followed by wheatgrass shots and all that kind of shit, but no, it's none of that. So I don't have a morning ritual. I do, however, have an evening ritual. Now, if I can cheat and give you my evening ritual, the reality is I'm a night owl. Okay, I always have been. The nighttime is the right time as far as I'm concerned. And so in a very natural state, 2 a.m. would be going to bed early for me. But what this kind of started happening naturally, and it has become it's not nightly ritual. It's more like my Thursday, Friday, Saturday night ritual.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go out. I don't fucking want to do anything. I want to be a homebody. But my wife likes to go to bed early. So she's usually in bed by 10. And that's when my kind of ceremony starts. And what that consists of is I want to put myself in a place where I feel, being a parent working full time with 2 kids doesn't allow for a lot of freedom in the traditional sense. But I try to put myself in the most free position possible. And the way I accomplish that, and everybody can do it differently, is I queue up a bunch of music that I want to listen to, or some discovery playlist of stuff I haven't heard yet. I pull out the books that I'm in the process of reading. And usually it's either a joint or a gummy or a pen or whatever my intoxicant of choice is going to be that night. Okay. And anything else that is kind of in my orbit of potential consumption. Sometimes it's TV, books, whatever. And I kind of lay it out all in front of me and get comfortable on the couch. And I get just stoned enough to the point that I'm feeling a little loose, but totally coherent. Mm-hmm. And then I start the journey. And what that journey usually looks like, it almost always starts on the music front. And I start going from there and, getting a little higher and a little more, sunk into the media. And then I might switch to the book and I might switch to the documentary I've been meaning to watch. But this goes on for about 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. My weekend mornings suck, to be completely honest with you. But what's happening during that time is much more constructive, I think, than it is pure fun. Because that's when all my ideas are firing. Yeah. That is where every idea, whether it be a business idea, a creative thought, a song I want to write, I'm not even a songwriter, a joke I want to write, an essay, whatever it is, or just, an idea that, a family outing, whatever it is, it's a mixture of business, personal and professional, just ideas, and I write all of them down as they're coming to me.
I love that.
Okay, I sit there with, and I the Google Keep, I have an Android, so I have the Google Keep, and I'm just writing notes all night until I'm eventually like, okay, I can't even see straight anymore. And then I go to bed. And then come Monday morning, I take a look at all of that. And I see what sticks with me in the sober light of day.
When do you look at it on Monday? At which point?
Usually like kind of Monday, like after the kids are off to wherever, be it school or camp.
Mid-morning lunches.
After I get like my mornings.
In the day.
Like late morning. Late morning, like after my administrative shit is off my plate and all that. Emails have been answered.
Drink coffee with that?
Always with coffee. Always with coffee. And I just go through. And sometimes I will have written 100 things down over the weekend, and like 2 of them are seem worthy of following up on. But whole lives and careers can be made on one good nugget of wisdom or a good idea that you run with. And so that constant, like setting myself up for a situation where I'm generating ideas and capturing all of them, okay? It's like that stretch I do with my heart, and then that Monday late morning I do with my head. And it's at that point where I say, I'm going to follow down this rabbit hole. I'm going to keep going. Or I'm going to say, well, that was fucking funny, but it was really dumb, and I'm not going to do that. And you scrap that. And that's most of it.
Going right back to college, I would say it sounds like you go from hanging out in my room playing the bass for three nights in a row, and then you spend one day going back to class. So you've actually like...
Your and Pat's room is the only dorm room I have ever seen in my life where someone has crowd surfed indoors. And that was Pat. That actually wasn't you.
No recollection of that.
Well, you were playing the bass on one side, and Pat was crowd surfing in the middle of a small dorm room. Like,
makes sense.
God love us. Yeah.
Love it, dude.
So... what do you got next?
Okay, what's up next? Your favorite hotel?
Oh, okay. So,
if you're a hotel guy,
so here's the thing. When you asked, I've heard you ask that question before. This might be my new favorite hotel.
God,
yeah.
I'm a hotel guy, but shit,
dude, just squat here. Offer her whatever she wants. This place is fantastic. No, for the last 10 years, I have not traveled nearly as much as I used to. I used to travel a lot for work, where I was just like getting put up in nice hotel after nice hotel. And so, to answer that question, like the Soho Grand in Lower Manhattan was always my favorite hotel. It's not that there's necessarily anything special about the rooms or there's some nice amenities, but my favorite hotel is usually dictated by the bar. And it's not even so much like getting loaded at the bar. It's just like, what mood does this bar set?
The vibe.
And when you were in like Lower Manhattan, especially in the, late 2000s, early 2010s, like there's a certain sort of like sexy potency of the whole place. Like, everybody in this place is at the top of their game. Yeah. The lighting is right. The seating is like, it's all cushioned and comfortable. And it's a really beautiful, ornate bar with like the chillest, coolest bartenders who will not steer you wrong if you aren't an expert on bourbon or whatever the hell it is. And they'll treat you right. And just like, that was always my favorite hotel to stay in. But I would say, like, if you were asking me of all time, it's not a specific hotel. I'm a big fan. I am a huge fan of cross-country road trips. Yeah. I've done 5 of them. I've done the north, the south. I've done right through the middle. And oftentimes it's these kind of, just ostensibly shitty roadside hotels and motels where it's like, amenities are zero, but talking to the guy behind the counter who's been there for 40 years, or the old lady behind the counter who's been there for 40 years, and other people passing through, you realize how many countries we have within this country, and it's so fucking interesting because this person, you ask them, if you just say something like, hey, where's a good place to eat around here? They're going to answer that, but they're also going to wind up telling you stories about the town or the time, Tony Bennett drove through, or the time, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's always going to be some interesting stories there. So, those shitty roadside motels where you're like making your own waffle in the morning or whatever it is, like those to me are actually like really, really special experiences where I kind of get to know. I've only lived on the coasts, you know what I mean? What the fuck do I know? And just to kind of like get a little slice of Americana and see, ways that we're the same, as much as we all talk about being different and as divisive as things can be. Like, there's a lot to be learned on the road.
Love it. Yeah, I did that a lot in my 20s, and now I just I stick to the major cities more often.
Yeah, sure.
But
I've had some rough experiences, but the reality is like it's. I can't wait to take my kids to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the patience yet.
We hop on planes in the Richmond family. I mean, I literally like zigzag the nation for so long. It's like I get PTSD.
I love it.
About that. John Pedigo and I, were in the band together.
Yeah, I know John. Sure.
We would read the Harry Potter books to each other.
Oh,
it was
my
like
God.
audio booking, but one of us being the audio book reader.
That's adorable.
But we would throw in lots of R-rated fictional things just to like what was going on. So it's still one of my favorite memories of our road trips.
That's great.
I'm not going to quote anything.
Yeah, please don't.
I just went to Harry Potter Land yesterday. I feel like with my kids. And so, no.
What a betrayal.
What about your favorite restaurant?
I struggle.
Give me an LA place.
I struggled this once. I struggled with this a lot because my wife comes from a great big Italian family, and there's just nothing I like more than whatever she's making, because she loves to cook. But my favorite LA restaurant, and this is going to sound sacrilege as an East Coaster, is actually a pizza joint, and it's called Weirdoughs Pizza in Studio City. And there's a very specific reason why I like it so much. It's Weirdoughs, Dough. So nice. Fun little play on words. But they are actually a New Jersey family who had a great restaurant in Jersey that I used to love. And their 3 kids all moved to LA. One's a singer, one's a dancer, one's an actor. And the parents missed them so much that despite all their extended family being back east, they said, fuck it, sold the restaurant, retired, and moved out to LA. But during the pandemic, Papa Vin got so bored. He said, I got to start making pies again. This is I'm so bored. He's like, I don't want to run a restaurant. I don't want all the headache that comes with that. I just want to start making pies again. They started selling pies out of their condo. And eventually they said, okay, we got to move into a commercial space. And so they actually did wind up opening another restaurant, but it's the red and white checkered tablecloths on plastic furniture. They're constantly blasting like early 90s hip hop and R&B. All their kids work there, and they're all big Italian family arguing with each other all the time, like in a fun, bantery way. And it is, I'll put it up against any East Coast pizza because these are East Coast originators who know what the fuck they're doing, and they are all like, you walk in, you're hugging that family before you leave, even if you've never been there before.
It's not like the Entourage episode where they complain about it not being the right water.
Oh, no, that was always the excuse. And to this day, I really don't know what the science is of that. But like people, look, bagels and pizza on balance are not great in LA. They have brought one of the most special aspects of New Jersey to LA and replicated it perfectly. So shout out to Weirdoughs.
Weirdoughs Pizza, baby. All right. What about a book? Is there a book that you'd like to talk about today?
Sure. So
people should read.
Highly recommend. I'm a big fan of essay books.
Okay.
I will lose interest on one long narrative arc. So I'm a big fan of books that 10 to 15 kind of individual chapters that you can skip around and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And honestly, to this day, the best one I ever read came out in 2012. It's called We Learn Nothing, and it's by Tim Kreider. Tim Kreider was and I think still is, a cartoonist for the New York Times and like a lot of other, big publications. But the best way to describe this book, and I'm partially jacking this from a review I read online. I don't remember specifically who wrote it, but it's a series of essays that are the conversations that you might have with your 2 or 3 best friends after you've you're finished with 3 pitchers, but you haven't got to the 4th yet.
Yeah.
So you're all good and loose, but you're not stupid yet. But you're willing to like let down your inhibitions and talk about real shit. For example, he'll do a chapter. One of my favorite chapters that he does in that book is about how we don't have a protocol for breaking up with friends, right? We have protocols for breaking up with romantic interests, but like what happens when a friendship has run its course, right? Usually what happens is you just kind of start ghosting a little bit. You become a little more distant. And then invariably someone on the other side of that is heartbroken because they're like, what happened? There's no, hey, we're breaking up. There's no,
that's
right? And there's a whole chapter about that. And some of the chapters are more somber. Some of them are freaking hilarious. I think one of the most interesting ones is about what he calls the soul toupee. So the soul toupee, I think you'll appreciate this, is, when you see a guy with a really bad toupee,
yeah,
okay, you're like, dude, what do you do? Everyone knows that's a toupee. Like, you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
But that guy is perhaps pretty disillusioned. He's like, he's wearing it. He must think he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that everyone could see. So your soul toupee is that trait of yours that you think you're hiding from everybody.
Yeah.
But is plainly obvious to everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's a book that is a series of these and of just really like deep, oh shit, I hadn't thought about it that way. That just, when you're done reading it, you're like, I feel like I understand the world 10% better, and like I said, it being an essay
book. It sounds
book,
amazing.
Oh dude, it's your kind of book. But if like one thing's not resonating with you, you just jump to the next one. There's no continuity. There's no loss there. So, and he's written other stuff, but I have gifted more people that book than any other book by probably 5x 6x. So once again, it's by Tim Kreider, Kreider. It's called We Learn Nothing, available anywhere you buy books.
Sweet. We'll put it in the show notes.
Cool.
What about a favorite quote?
Favorite quote? As far as I know, my dad originated this quote. I have looked online. I couldn't find it anywhere else, and I think he originated it. I don't remember. I was like in middle school, maybe 7th, 8th grade, and he saw me just spending hours in front of the mirror, combing my hair and like trying on different outfits, like doing everything I could to try to like win popularity contests and for just general social acceptance. Even though I had tons of friends, I was just constantly focused on impressing other people. And my dad comes in the room and I'm looking at this like tri-mirror, like trying to get my hair just right. And he's like, Frank, if you're trying to make an impression, that's the only impression you'll make. And I was like,
mic drop.
It just, in that moment, what he was just saying was some form of like, dude, nobody likes to try hard, and yourself is kind of awesome, and be yourself. It's just a different way to say it. And, you hear be yourself ever since you're in preschool or whatever. It doesn't really mean anything, but it was in that moment I was like literally exhausted with myself of like, Jesus, why am I spending so much time doing this? And when he put that down, it made me realize like, oh yeah, when I see someone else who has clearly been primping for hours or, had that first day of school outfit picked out for months already, I'm like, oh, that guy's fucking lame. And I'm like, dude, I'm that guy. So yeah, if you're trying to make an impression, that's the only impression you'll make.
Love that.
Care of one Richard Hajdu.
So now let's get down to the nitty gritty. What song do you want to share?
Okay.
You have to pick one.
I got it. You're only getting one.
I know you prepared for this because you're the fucking straight A student of all time.
Yeah. So no. I thought long and hard about this, and I was like, "What's the?" I could just sit here and say, "Well, my favorite song is whatever." Look, my old A&R boss used to say, when it comes to music, if you love it and I hate it, guess what? We're both right. So me saying my favorite song I didn't think would add much to here. But I want to mention the song that I think has the most connective tissue between you and me. So you mentioned earlier that we hit it off quickly on music, and we did. And I will never forget, we were doing, some rush or pledge activity. I don't remember the specifics of what it was. It was basically kind of like a scavenger hunt around Providence, right?
Oh yeah, I think
so. You had, call it 20 of us, just roaming around, and it was like it was low intensity. Like there was no stress on this. We were all just having a good time.
Yeah.
And as we're moving around, we're all like having different conversations. You talk to this person and then person, so on and so forth. And I don't remember who it brought it up or how it came up, but someone mentioned Digital Underground. And I was like, holy shit, like I love Digital Underground. I have all their stuff. It's so much more than the Humpty Dance, blah, 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 blah. And you caught wind of this and you came up and the first thing you said, or should I say the first thing you sung was, "We are the freaks of the industry." And I was like, oh shit, like I knew I liked this guy, but now I fucking love this guy.
Say you Gian, nobody else is seeing. And the chick that you want is in front of you. I still know it.
I know, of course you do.
All
of course you do.
One of the greatest albums of all time.
It is still,
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Shock G. Just the trickster of hip hop, the most like lovable pervert you ever met in your life. Like just like get funky, get nasty, but like not in an aggressive or abusive way. It was like they just really like hit that perfect balance. And I just remember, and you and I went on to figure out a whole bunch of other songs beyond Digital Underground that we both liked. But I was like, man, this guy like lives down the road from Reverend Horton Heat, but he also loves Digital Underground and he also loves Ice Cube. And I'm just like, man, I hope this guy is in my life forever in some capacity. So my song for the day is from their 1990 first album release, Sex Pack. It's Digital Underground's Freaks of the Industry.
Fuck yes. Oh my God.
I came prepared, motherfucker.
I get chills.
I was ready for this shit.
That song is so good. I'm sure I told you this, but during the Party Police era, I cold emailed him.
You showed me the email.
Yeah, I showed you the email.
Yep.
I emailed his manager actually and asked if he would guest on my song Dasted.
Yep.
And and there's this part I wrote specifically for him, and then he was going to charge $5,000, which at that time I didn't pay, and oh my God, do I regret it? I had it. I should have just written the check, and I would have had it. And but he wrote me back, and he's like, I remember. But he said, because you read the email, but he's like, I'll do it for $5,000, but what you really need to do is go find a local rapper, and that's how we found Tupac. Right. Writing me this email explaining how he found Tupac, and so I went and I actually got this guy Slim Gravy, who was like a Dallas rapper.
Perfect.
He didn't come on Dasted. He came on Pool Party, that song.
But I remember your video for Dasted, and you were kind of wearing the Humpty Hump, like
I did the Humpty Hump verse because I can like impersonate Shock G. We have you did it very well. Voice.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot what that was, but my number one karaoke song, I talked to Eric Kroll about this last night, is the Humpty Dance. So, stop what you're doing because I'm about to ruin
the image and the style that you're used to. I taught my kids the actual Humpty Dance, and now they do it fairly regularly to that song.
To the side, like their legs,
like they can actually shaking and twisting, kind of like I was. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Crazy, whack, funky. People say you look like MC Hammer on crack, Humpty.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. What about charity or cause?
Yeah. So I feel like I give these kinds of answers a lot, and I apologize, but I'll land this one, I promise. So it's not a specific charity, it's not a specific cause. Everyone has things near and dear to them. If you've got breast cancer running in your family, pancreatic or what have you, or diabetes, and there's something that's near and dear to you, and you have the funds to spare. Absolutely, put it towards those things. But I've started something new, and it started about 5 or 6 years ago for me, and it started with our nanny. Her son, okay, they're of Salvadoran descent, and they came here some 20 and some odd years ago, but he was graduating high school, and his parents had never went to college. Or gone to college. I don't think his parents had ever even, graduated whatever the Salvadoran equivalent of high school was. And he really wanted to go to college, but he really had no idea, just frankly, how to do it. FAFSA forms and, the application process. And even though, some might say, oh, come on, it's not that complicated. I'm like, look, if you've never done it, your parents have never done it, and you go to, some kind of like crappy public school with limited resources, you might be pretty intimidated by the process. And I said, oh, well, that's ridiculous. He's a smart kid, good work ethic. I was like, all right, let's go get you signed up for college.
Yeah.
So it didn't cost a dime. It was just my time. I put aside a couple of afternoons where we would, we went and got his old high school transcripts, and we went to the local community college, and we, said, well, what can you offer? And we went to another one, and what are you offering? And so on and so forth. And long story short, got him signed up in a 2-year program, and he just transferred over to get his 4-year degree. But in that process, he also said, I got a cousin who's going through the same thing.
She needs help too.
Can you help her out?
Yeah.
And so I started working with her. And then this is all to say, it's not even about college. It's not about this particular process. But what I try to do is that at any given time, I'm helping at least one person on a very one-to-one level. Yeah. And if you think about how that starts to scale, if just everyone who frankly has the time and or the means to just be helping one person at a time in a way that how, think of what that would do at a national level, right? Because look, I could go throw money at, this charity, that charity. It's an active choice, but ultimately like a passive act in that I don't know where it's going. I don't know what's actually being done with it. I don't know what percentage of it is going to the good stuff versus administrative. But this is something where I'm giving my time, and I know that it is all impactful. I'm watching the impact in front of me, and then I stay in touch with all these kids with regular lunches to make sure whatever that next step might be, whether it's transferring to a 4-year university or applying to law school or whatever the hell it ultimately is going to be, is just okay, what do you need? What do you need from an administrative standpoint, an advisement standpoint? Because they just people don't realize how valuable it is. If you have 2 parents who went to college, 2 parents who work white collar jobs, these kinds of things, how much of a leg up you already have just by virtue of that. And so I'm trying to give of myself in that way. And so I guess what I'm saying is, look, I ain't a perfect person, but at any given time, I try to make sure that I'm actively helping at least one person. It's usually a younger person, or a young adult or late teen who is at some kind of inflection point.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and when I don't have one of them under my wing, I'm okay, I got to find another one. Let's
cool,
go.
Man.
So, that's, I probably could have said it more succinctly, but that is my cause, as it were.
Yeah. And I think all people have the means to go do that.
Everyone's,
everybody knows something.
Your time. Yeah. And we all have some expertise.
Yeah. And then, what about investment? What would you invest money in? 100 milli.
Okay, so let me make sure I got this question straight, right? So it's, Frank, you got a bag, here's a briefcase, $100 million, and you can only invest it in one thing, correct? So I think what you're really asking is just what investment do you believe in above all else?
Yes.
Right? My answer to that, now I'm not a real estate guy. We haven't talked industrial real estate once here, and I know that's the world you live in, okay? I'm not a real estate guy. I've bought one piece of property my entire life. It's the house I live in now. But if I had $100 million and you put a gun to my head and said invest it, I would look toward real estate in northern regions that if and when climate change takes us to a place where we are looking at, look at the heat waves we're experiencing right now. It's 132 degrees.
And come to Texas.
Oh, Jesus. The heat, plus the humidity. Who can... God, I couldn't do it. But I would be investing in kind of, whether it's in the northern United States or southern Canada or what have you. Look, real estate is generally a good investment by and large. Yeah. But I'm looking at it as, hey, look, it's entirely possible that over the next 50 years... those lands become more valuable because what is cold now may become more temperate then as a result of climate change. And by the way, I'm not the most knowledgeable on climate change. I'm not, someone who is 100% up on all the science that I should be. But it's hey, look, at worst, you've bought some real estate. At best, you're not only is it more desirable than it ever was as a result of changing temperatures, but for the sake of my own family, my own lineage, and so on, we would have access to, I don't know if it's suddenly North Dakota or Vermont or Manitoba or whatever, that's suddenly hey, we've got San Diego weather up here now. But if you were asking me, that's probably where northern real estate is the quick answer to that question.
I like that idea. I've never even heard of that or thought about it, but it makes perfect sense.
Well, have you ever hear the expression, the emotional hedge?
Yeah.
Right?
I was thinking like Pascal's wager.
Yeah, there you go. Like the idea of like if all goes to hell, put your money on the other side of it, like so that you're covered.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of I guess it's a bit of a doomsday take, but like, you know, if you're asking, that's probably what I would do with it.
Game theory, I believe.
Yeah, there you go.
Call it. And at Brown, they probably taught that. So number one thing on the 2023 vision board / bucket list. It's my last question for you.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'd like to take my consulting practice and pick a lane. You know, I'm interested in so many things, like, and I'm sure, you know, you of all people can relate. It's very, very hard for me to say that I want to do any one thing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And there will probably never be that thing. You know, one of my mentors has said to me in the past, he's like, you know, you're going to ask yourself forever, what do you want to be when you grow up? Stop asking yourself the question. Like, you're not that guy. You are not that guy who's interested in one thing and above all else. So, but for the sake of my consulting practice, too much of it has been kind of very custom jobs, doesn't scale. You know, I have some subcontractors under me, but I've not really looked to grow the business beyond a solopreneurship. But I think I would like to at least scale, you know, templatize one or two services that I have and start to scale them up a little bit, which is kind of a boring answer. It's not, I mean, I'm not climbing Mount Everest, but this for me has been a 3.5 year process of figuring out like, what can I productize? What can I templatize? And I've really failed at it thus far. So my bucket list by the end of the year is to like pick one of those lanes and say, hey, there's a lot of other shit that I want to do in my life, but my quote unquote working hours, I want to kind of master and scale one or two particular services.
Tony Robbins really brought that to my attention for my business. When I went to his business mastery conference, and I've built a lot of systems in place for my real estate business.
Sure.
And man, that is just critical. And at the Tony Robbins conference, he's like, who here is a business owner? And I was like, me. Who here is a business operator? Me.
Yeah.
He goes, well, if you're a business operator, you're not really just a business owner, because a business owner doesn't have to operate. They hire people to operate their business. And I was like, oh, man.
Just deflate.
Mic drop, Tony Robbins.
Right.
So that's, I think that's awesome, dude. And I know you're going to do it. I'd highly recommend hiring an executive coach. I'm a big fan of those.
Tell me more about that, because I got to be honest. I will say I have this sort of, I don't know if it's a blind spot, but it's a healthy skepticism of the coaching industry more generally. But I have heard a number of people whose opinions I trust, including yours, you know, say like, yeah, there's some bullshit out there for sure, but there are some that are worth their weight in gold. And I'm just curious to know what your experience has been there.
I'm going to save time explaining and say, go listen to my podcast with Dan Coughlin.
Okay, got it.
And he's my executive coach, and I've been working with him since 2018.
Way to plug a past podcast too. Like, that's good. That's good cross promotion. I like it.
Yeah, and plugging Dan Coughlin, who is amazing. And we talk all through how he helped me do exactly
how many coaches did you go through before you settled on one? Because I could see this almost be like picking a therapist, like where you got to figure out who you have the alchemy with.
Well, there's different coaches for different things. So I feel like I worked with the Tony Robbins for all the Tony Robbins stuff that he teaches.
Yeah.
And then Grant Cardone taught me a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And then Gary Vee taught me some stuff.
Okay.
And I hired a social media consultant. All of them, they teach their thing.
Yep.
And then I like learning those things, but I'm not going to marry any of them as my guru or therapist.
Good.
Dan is more a sounding board for you. So he doesn't teach you anything. He just provides this awesome environment where I talk to him typically once a week on the phone, especially not during the summer, but during the rest of the year. And he's like, what do you want to talk about today, Ward? I go, well, I want to talk about building systems. Okay, what systems? These systems. Well, what do you want to start with? This. Okay. Well, how do you do that?
Yeah,
I do this, and then he writes it all down and he sends you a letter after each session.
Okay.
And then I take that normally and I get with my team and I'm like, hey, I went through all of this, so let's build a PowerPoint deck going and building all these processes out.
Almost sounds kind of Socratic in his methodology.
Yeah, but I'd go listen to that podcast.
Okay.
And then he gives you 3 sessions typically. Hope Dan, but he typically will hook you up with 3 sessions and say, try me out for free.
Yep.
And if you like me, great. I mean, obviously he doesn't do that for anyone who calls him, but I'm sure he'll do it for you.
I appreciate that.
And you can test them. So, and I love that in business. Like I don't charge unless I create value.
I got
like,
you. Yep.
I don't want your money unless I've created the value. It's nature of being a real estate broker.
Love it.
And where do our listeners find you?
I'm on most of the social media platforms. You know, having worked for MySpace back in the day, I've always been really passionate about.
Still on MySpace?
Oh God,
I go to MySpace.
MySpace. Oh my God, no! Please do not find me on MySpace. No, but Twitter at Frank Hajdu. It's Hajdu, which is that silent J has been the bane of my existence.
I got it right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just
so.
Everyone gets it, but I'm not the kind of person who gets offended when someone gets it wrong. I'm like, it's a wacky Hungarian spelling. I get it, but I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Always at FRANK Hajdu, LinkedIn as well, and you can see me, you know, spouting off my nonsense. And I will say, during that nightly ritual, is usually when my best shit, my rawest thoughts go public, and sometimes on Monday I got to delete a few of them, but
it happens.
That's where you find me.
I love you, brother.
Dude, man, this was really, really a treat, and I love what you're doing in every way you're doing it, and just have so much respect for like this journey and your openness about all of it to everyone around you. And I guarantee that your listeners, your readers, you know, your audience, in every one of those facets has gained something from you. You are always creating value, whether you mean to or not. And, you know, we're really, really just a beacon of fun and joy and goodness to, you know, everyone I know who's ever known you.
Man, I really appreciate that.
You got it, man. I mean it 100%.
And thanks for always, you've always been there for me. And you still are. And
dude,
you said, I hope this guy's in my life forever.
I fucking mean
I am. So you're stuck with me, my man.
I love it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right. Love you.
Love you, brother.
Thanks for trucking on.
Anytime.
Let's go.
I need someone to help me find a brand new attitude. I need someone to lend me a little bit of latitude. I wish someone would tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do. Then the voice in my gut kicked me in the butt and said, I'm the only one you need to listen to. Then my soul told me I'm the only one to listen to. And I'm trucking on. And I'm trucking on. Move her on down the line. Another town will do me fine. I'm trucking on. I'm trucking on. I tried to run away like a freight train with no track. I tried to escape like a convict leaving Alcatraz. I prayed every day for a cachet I could never have. My bad decisions catalyzed the best ideas I've ever had. Bad decisions catalyzed the best ideas I've ever had. And I'm trucking on. I'm trucking on. Move her on down the line. Another town will do me fine. I'm trucking on. I'm trucking on. Yeah. So much shame when I share my little lies. No one left to blame until I stare into these eyes. I'm gonna tell the truth to you till I break on through to the other side. Living like I'm gonna die is the only time I feel alive. Living like I'm gonna die is the only time I feel alive. And I'm trucking on. I'm trucking on.